A soft drizzle, the kind that defined an Oregon autumn, fell over Portland. Michael Miller gazed out his study window, watching the drops form tiny rivulets on the glass. 16 years had passed, but the ritual remained the same. Every October 17th, he would sit before the last photograph of Sara and let the memories flow, as relentless as the rain. "There again, Michael?" Jennifer asked from the doorway, a mug of tea in her hand. Her eyes had wept so many times they seemed permanently red-rimmed. "She would have been 30 today, Jen," he answered, his gaze fixed on the photo. Sara, smiling with her newly installed braces, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, and that small scar on her chin from a bicycle fall when she was 7. 30 years. Jennifer placed the mug beside the photograph and wrapped her arms around her husband from behind. Time had silvered Michael's temples and deepened the lines around his eyes. But to her, he was still the same man who had held her hand at the police station on that fateful night in 1998. "Sometimes I wonder if we did enough," Michael murmured. "We did everything humanly possible," Jennifer replied firmly, though the doubt had never truly left either of them. The case of Sara Miller had captured the nation's attention for months. A 14-year-old girl who had simply vanished between her school and her home. A journey of barely 10 blocks she had walked hundreds of times. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses, no concrete leads. Only a pink backpack found in an alley 3 blocks from Roosevelt High School. The Millers had appeared on television shows, distributed flyers, hired private investigators, and chased false leads that only led to more heartbreak. With each passing year, the hope of finding Sara alive faded, but it never disappeared completely. "You should get ready for your trip," Jennifer said, trying to steer him from the thoughts they both knew too well. "What time is your flight to Seattle tomorrow?" 8:40. Michael replied, finally tearing his eyes from the photograph. "It's only 3 days. The presentation is on Thursday, and I should be back Friday night." Michael was an architect at a Portland firm that had recently begun expanding into Washington state. As a senior partner, he was often sent to oversee new projects and meet with potential clients. "I packed your suitcase," Jennifer added. "You just need to add your documents and laptop." That night, like so many over the past 16 years, Michael dreamed of Sara. In his dream, she was still 14, asking him why he had stopped looking for her. He woke with a start, his heart pounding, a cold sweat slicking his back. Beside him, Jennifer slept restlessly, murmuring unintelligible words. The morning arrived with a clear sky, a rarity in Portland at that time of year. Michael took it as a good omen as Jennifer drove him to the airport. "I'll call you when I land," he promised, kissing her before heading to the gate. "I love you," she replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. 16 years of grief had left a permanent mark on them both. The flight to Seattle was less than an hour. From the window, Michael watched the clouds break, revealing the signature landscape of the Pacific Northwest. Mountains, endless forests, and finally the brilliant blue of Puget Sound and the unmistakable silhouette of the Space Needle. His hotel was downtown, a few blocks from the office where he had his meeting the next day. After checking in and dropping off his luggage, he decided to take a walk to get his bearings. Seattle was similar to Portland in many ways, but it had a faster pulse, a different energy. As he wandered the streets near Pike Place Market, watching tourists and locals mingle among stalls of fresh fish and crafts, Michael noticed a group of homeless people gathered in a small square. It was a common sight in the big cities of the West, especially since the housing and opioid crises had hit the region. Michael usually carried a few loose bills to give to those who asked for help. He approached the group, pulling out his wallet to offer something to an older woman holding a paper cup out to passers-by. That's when he saw her. She was sitting on the ground, slightly apart from the main group, her back against a brick wall. Her matted, dirty hair fell over her face, but something in her posture, in the way she held a small notebook she was scribbling in, caught Michael's attention. The woman looked up for a moment, and Michael felt the world stop. Despite the dark circles under her eyes, the skin weathered by years of exposure, and the extreme thinness, those green eyes with a peculiar golden ring around the pupil, were unmistakable. Michael froze, unable to breathe. The woman looked back down at her notebook, oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed. On trembling legs, Michael moved closer, trying to get a better look at her face. When he was just a few feet away, he could make out a small scar on her chin, barely visible beneath a thin layer of grime. "Sara," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the bustle of the square. The woman didn't react, continuing her scribbling. "Sara Miller?" he asked, louder this time, his heart hammering so hard in his chest he feared she could hear it. This time the woman visibly tensed, but didn't look up. Her hands, covered in small scars and with nails bitten to the quick, stilled on the notebook. "Sara," Michael repeated, feeling the world spin around him. The woman slowly lifted her head, her green eyes now wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Nobody's called me that in a long time," she said, her voice raspy, almost a whisper. The accent was different, harder, but there was something undeniably familiar in its timbre. Michael knelt in front of her, ignoring the damp pavement soaking through his dress pants. Up close, he could better see the marks the years had left on the face he once knew better than his own. Faint scars crossed her left cheek, and a more prominent one ran through her right eyebrow. But it was her. It was Sara. "It's me, Sara. It's Dad," Michael said, his voice breaking with emotion. The woman tensed even more, clutching the notebook to her chest like a shield. Her eyes darted across Michael's face, scrutinizing him. For a moment it looked as if she might run, but then something in her gaze shifted. "Michael Miller?" she asked, her voice a thread of sound, as if she hadn't spoken the name in years. Michael nodded, unable to speak as tears began to blur his vision. He reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch her, to confirm that she was real and not another cruel hallucination born of years of frustrated hope. Sara, or the woman he believed to be Sara, instinctively recoiled from his touch, pressing herself against the brick wall. "It's not possible," she murmured, blinking rapidly. "You're dead. You're all dead." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. "Dead? Who told you that?" "No, Sara, we're alive. Your mother and I, we never stopped looking for you," he said, trying to stay calm despite the emotional whirlwind. "Jennifer, your mom, she's in Portland. We still live in the same house. Your room is just like you." He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. The woman was now staring at him with an unreadable expression, a mix of disbelief and something darker, deeper. "My name is Claire now," she said finally. "Claire Johnson. Sara Miller died a long time ago." With shaking hands, Michael pulled out his phone and quickly found a photograph. It was from a few months ago, he and Jennifer in the backyard of their Portland home, smiling faintly at the camera during his 50th birthday. "Look," he said, holding the screen out to her. "This is us. Your mom and me. We're alive, Sara." Claire eyed the photograph warily, keeping her distance. Her eyes widened slightly as she recognized the woman in the picture. "She looks like her," she admitted, her voice distant, but older. "It's been 16 years, Michael replied, putting his phone away. 16 years since you disappeared on your way home from school." An older homeless man approached, eyeing Michael in his business suit with suspicion. "Everything all right, Claire?" he asked, placing himself protectively beside her. "It's fine, Frank," she answered, not taking her eyes off Michael. "He's an old acquaintance." Frank nodded but remained close, watchful. Michael noticed that several others in the group were now observing them intently. "Can we talk somewhere?" Michael asked, aware they were drawing attention. "Please, just for a few minutes." Claire seemed to debate with herself. Finally, she closed her notebook and struggled to her feet. Michael noticed she had a slight limp. "There's a coffee shop over there," she said, pointing across the square. "But I don't have any money." "My treat," Michael said quickly. "Whatever you want." They walked in silence, separated by a few feet that felt like an uncrossable chasm. Michael felt that if he blinked, she might vanish again. The coffee shop was small and nearly empty. The barista shot a disapproving look at Claire as she entered, but Michael's determined expression stopped any comment. They sat at a table away from the window at Claire's request. "A black coffee, please," she asked when the barista approached, "and a turkey sandwich if you can." "The same for me," Michael said, though the knot in his stomach made it impossible to think about food. "And 2 bottles of water." When the barista left, the silence grew even heavier. Claire glanced around nervously as if calculating escape routes. How have you been?" Michael asked, knowing how absurd the question sounded. A bitter laugh escaped Claire's lips. "As you can see, I'm the picture of the American dream," she replied, gesturing to her worn, dirty clothes. Michael nodded, ashamed of his clumsy question. "I'm sorry, it's just... I don't know where to begin." The barista returned with their orders. Claire immediately took the sandwich and began to eat with a voraciousness that spoke more than any words about her situation. Michael waited patiently, watching her every move, every gesture, searching for the girl he remembered in this stranger of a woman. "Don't look at me like that," she said between bites. "Like I'm a ghost." "To us, you were," Michael answered honestly. "A ghost we never stopped searching for." Claire finished the sandwich and drank half her water in one go. Then she looked directly at Michael for the first time. "They told me you died in a car accident," she said, her voice flat, emotionless. "That I had nowhere to go back to." "Who told you that?" Michael asked, feeling rage begin to mix with the shock. Claire's gaze drifted to the window. "The people who took me." A chill ran down Michael's spine. For years, he and Jennifer had imagined the worst-case scenarios: kidnapping, trafficking, murder. But there was always that sliver of hope that Sara had simply run away, that she'd found a better life somewhere. "You were kidnapped," he stated, dreading the answer. Claire nodded slowly, her fingers fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I got out of school late that day, detention for arguing with Mrs. Peterson," she began, her voice distant. "I remember I was in a hurry because I wanted to get home in time for that show we liked. What was it called?" "Buffy the Vampire Slayer," Michael answered automatically. "Tuesday nights." A shadow of a smile crossed Claire's face. "Yeah, that was it. I took the shortcut through the alley behind the music store." She paused. "Even though you told me not to. There was a white van parked there. A man asked me for directions to the central library. When I got closer to show him..." She stopped, taking a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't remember much after that. Just waking up in a dark place, my hands tied. There were other girls, but they wouldn't let us talk to each other." Michael felt sick. Every word confirmed his worst fears. "Where did they take you?" "Lots of places. First, I think we were in Idaho, then Nevada," Claire answered, her gaze lost in memories Michael couldn't and didn't want to imagine. "They moved us around constantly. They told us if we tried to escape, our families would pay the price, and then after a few months they told us we didn't have families to go back to anymore." Michael couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears began to stream down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Sara. I am so sorry." he said through choked sobs. We never stopped looking, never. Claire watched him cry with a detached curiosity, as if witnessing a strange and unfamiliar phenomenon. Is it really you? She finally asked, her voice small, almost childlike. This isn't another hallucination? Michael wiped his tears with the back of his hand. It's me, Sara, and your mother is going to be on the first flight to Seattle when I tell her I've found you. Claire tensed visibly. No, I'm not ready for that, she said quickly. I can't see her. Not like this. Sara, don't call me that, she exclaimed, drawing the barista's gaze. That person doesn't exist anymore. I'm not the little girl you remember. I've done things, I've lived through things you can't imagine. Michael took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. Claire, then, he conceded. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, but please let me help you. Why? She asked with genuine confusion. Why now? It's been 16 years. I have a life, as miserable as it is. Because you're our daughter, Michael answered simply, and we never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Claire looked away, visibly uncomfortable with the word love. I don't know if I can go back to that life, she murmured. I don't know if there's anything left of Sara in me. Michael took out his wallet and pulled out his hotel keycard. I'll be here for 3 more days, he said, sliding the card across the table. Room 412. If you want to talk or if you need anything at all, I'll be there. And if I'm not, leave a message. I'll come back. Claire picked up the card cautiously, as if it might burn her. I'm not promising anything, she warned. I don't ask for promises, Michael replied. He wanted only for her to understand that she had choices, that she wasn't alone. They finished their coffees in silence. As they stepped out of the cafe, Claire paused on the sidewalk. I have to go, she said, glancing toward the group of homeless people still gathered nearby. Frank's watching my things. Can I see you tomorrow? Michael asked, his voice laced with fear at the thought of letting her slip away. Claire hesitated. Maybe, she answered at last. I'm usually near the public library after noon. Sometimes they let me in to use the bathrooms. Michael nodded, committing the details to memory. Until tomorrow, then, he said, fighting the urge to embrace her. Claire met his gaze one final time, her expression unreadable, before limping away. Michael watched her blend into the crowd, battling the impulse to follow to ensure she wouldn't vanish again. With trembling hands, he pulled out his phone and dialed Jennifer's number. The phone rang 3 times before his wife's familiar voice answered. Michael, is something wrong with your flight? Her tone anchored him to reality, reminding him that the past 40 minutes hadn't been a dream. Jen, he began, but the words caught in his throat. How could he explain the inexplicable? Michael, are you okay? You're scaring me. The concern in her voice was palpable. He forced himself to take a deep breath, spotting a nearby bench and sinking onto it as his legs nearly gave way. I've found her, Jen, he whispered, his voice breaking. I've found Sara. A profound silence followed. For a moment, Michael feared the call had dropped. What are you saying? Jennifer replied at last, her voice so low he could barely hear it. Michael, if this is some kind of... It's her, Jen, he interrupted, his certainty unshakable. I've seen her, I've spoken to her. She has the scar on her chin, those eyes with the golden ring around the pupil. It's our Sara. He heard Jennifer inhale sharply. For years they had endured calls from people claiming to have spotted Sara or women insisting they were her. Each false lead had reopened wounds that never fully healed. Where? Jennifer asked, her voice now firm and practical. Where is she? In Seattle, near Pike Place Market, Michael answered, staring in the direction Claire had disappeared. Jen, she's living on the streets. Another silence fell. heavy with a different kind of pain. Is she okay? Jennifer asked, her voice cracking. Michael closed his eyes, picturing Claire's gaunt face, the scars, the limp, the way she had devoured her sandwich as if it were her first meal in days. No, she's not okay, he said honestly. She's been through terrible things, Jen. She believes we're dead. They told her we died in an accident. Who? Jennifer's voice sharpened with a dangerous edge. The people who kidnapped her, Michael replied, the weight of the truth crashing down on him. She was taken, Jen. A muffled sob echoed from the other end. Michael longed to hold her, to share this unbearable burden. I'm coming there, Jennifer said after a moment, and he could imagine her wiping away tears, squaring her shoulders as she always did in a crisis. I'll take the first flight I can get. Jen, there's something else you should know. Michael hesitated, searching for the right words. She doesn't go by Sara anymore. She's calling herself Claire Johnson, and she's not sure she wants to see us. This is all so sudden for her. It doesn't matter, Jennifer replied, her determination unyielding. If she's in Seattle, I'm going to Seattle. If she doesn't want to see me yet, I'll wait. I've waited 16 years, Michael. I can wait a little longer. They agreed that Jennifer would catch an early flight the next morning. After hanging up, Michael sat on the bench for what felt like hours, watching people pass by, each lost in their own world, oblivious to how his had just been forever altered. That night, in the solitude of his hotel room, sleep eluded Michael. Every time he closed his eyes, Claire's face haunted him. The frail woman he had found, so different from the teenager he remembered. What horrors had she endured over those 16 years? How had she ended up on the streets, and why hadn't she tried to contact them if she believed they were gone? Unanswered questions tormented him until dawn. He showered and dressed mechanically, preparing for a meeting that now seemed absurdly trivial. He considered canceling it, but decided he needed the distraction until his rendezvous with Claire. On his way to the office, he called Detective Robert Sanchez, who had handled Sara's case for years before retiring. Despite the early hour, Sanchez answered on the second ring. Miller, the detective's gravelly voice conveyed surprise. Everything all right? I've found her, Rob, Michael said without preamble. I found Sara. A silence, then a deep sigh. Are you sure this time? Sanchez asked, his caution born of years chasing dead ends. Completely, Michael replied. I spoke with her. It's her. Where? Seattle. Living on the streets. Sanchez muttered a curse. Have you contacted local authorities? Michael hesitated. No, she's scared, Rob. I don't want to push her. Besides, she's an adult now. Technically, she's not a missing person anymore. I understand, Sanchez said after a pause. But there are protocols, Michael, and depending on what happened to her, it was a kidnapping, Michael interjected, by a human trafficking ring, from what I can tell. They told her we were dead. Another curse, more vehement this time. We need to open an investigation, Sanchez said, his tone shifting to professional mode. These networks don't stop at one victim. If we can identify the perpetrators, I know, Michael conceded. But first I need her to trust me, to trust us. Jennifer's arriving today. Let us try to help her first, and then we'll figure out the investigation. Sanchez sighed again. All right, Michael, but stay in touch, and if you need anything. Thanks, Rob. The meeting passed in a haze. Michael presented designs, answered questions, and discussed budgets on autopilot, his mind constantly drifting back to Claire. As soon as it ended, he headed straight to the public library, arriving just before noon. He settled on a bench with a clear view of the main entrance and waited. At 12:15, he received a message from Jennifer saying her plane had landed. By 1:05, he began to fear Claire wouldn't show. At 1:32, he spotted her. She approached from across the street, accompanied by the elderly man Michael remembered as Frank. Claire looked even more fragile in the daylight, her limp more pronounced. She wore the same clothes as the day before, though she had tried to tidy her hair. Michael rose slowly, not wanting to startle her. Claire saw him almost immediately and stopped. She exchanged a few words with Frank, who nodded and walked away after giving Michael a suspicious glance. "You came," Michael said as she crossed the street toward him. "I said maybe," she replied with a shrug. "Didn't have anything better to do today?" Michael smiled faintly, recognizing her attempt to keep an emotional distance. "How's your leg?" he asked, noting the effort it took her to walk. Claire frowned as if surprised by the question. "An old fracture that never healed properly," she said curtly. "It's not important." An awkward silence settled between them. Michael desperately searched for something to say that wouldn't feel trivial or intrusive. "Are you hungry?" he asked finally. "There's a good restaurant a couple of blocks away." Claire shook her head. "I prefer not to go to restaurants," she said. "Too many people staring." "We could get takeout and eat in a park," he suggested. Claire considered it. "There's a Thai place over there," she said, pointing. "They have good prices." They walked side by side, maintaining a careful distance. Michael yearned to break the silence, but every question that came to mind seemed inadequate or painful. "I spoke with your mother," he said at last as they waited for their order in the small shop. "She's coming to Seattle? She arrives today." Claire tensed visibly, her lips tightening. "I told you I'm not ready for that," she replied, her tone a mix of fear and reproach. "I know, and I'm sorry," Michael said sincerely. "But she needed to know, Claire. She suffered as much as I have all these years." Claire turned her gaze to the window. "You have no idea what suffering is," she murmured, so softly that Michael barely caught it. They collected their food and made their way to a nearby park, settling on a bench beneath a tree. Far from the clusters of families enjoying the rare, sunny day, Michael finally broke the silence that had settled between them. They had been eating for several minutes, the quiet punctuated only by the scrape of plastic forks. "Will you tell me what happened to you?" he asked gently. Claire set her fork aside and stared toward the horizon. "Do you really want to know?" Her voice was devoid of emotion. "Are you sure?" Michael nodded, though a knot of dread was tightening in his stomach. "After they took me," Claire began, her voice as mechanical as if she were reading a report about someone else. "They brought me to a house somewhere in Idaho, I think. There were other girls there, 5 or 6 of us, all young. They kept us drugged most of the time, pills at first. They made you feel disconnected." Michael shut his eyes for a second, fighting the urge to scream. "They trained us," she continued, her gaze fixed on some distant, unseen point. "That's what they called it, training, to be compliant. The ones who didn't learn fast enough, we just never saw them again." She paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "After a few months, they started selling us. For hours or days, sometimes weeks. It depended on how much they paid." Nausea churned in Michael's gut, but he forced himself to remain composed. Claire didn't need to deal with his horror right now. "How long?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. "How long were you with them?" He dreaded the answer. 7 years, Claire replied, and Michael felt the world tilt on its axis. "Until I turned 21. I was too old for their clientele then, so they sold me to another group, one that ran massage parlors in Nevada." Michael couldn't suppress a choked sob. Claire looked at him then, for the first time since she'd begun her story, her expression surprisingly compassionate. "I told you you wouldn't want to know," she said softly. "I need to know." Michael insisted, wiping at his eyes. I need to understand. Claire gave a slight nod. I was there for another 4 years. It was different, less violent, but just as controlled. They gave us drugs to keep us working. By the end, I was addicted to just about anything you could name. Oxy, meth, heroin. She paused again, looking down at her hands, which trembled slightly. I escaped 5 years ago when they were moving the business to California. I stole some cash and a car and just drove until I ran out of gas, ended up in Seattle. A bitter smile touched her lips. I spent 2 years trying to get clean on my own. Almost died a few times. Frank found me during an overdose. He helped me. Got me to a shelter, but I couldn't stay there. Too many rules, too many questions. Claire, Michael started, but she held up a hand, stopping him. I'm clean now, she said, a clear note of pride in her voice. 3 years, it's not easy, but I am. That's incredible, Michael said, his sincerity absolute. You are incredibly strong. Claire just shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I survived. Not everyone does. Michael's phone vibrated. It was a text from Jennifer letting him know she'd just arrived at the hotel. It's your mother, he said, looking up from the screen. She's at the hotel. Claire tensed again. I don't know if I can do this, she murmured, a tremor in her voice. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Michael assured her. We can wait, or I can ask her to come here if you'd prefer an open space. Claire seemed to be wrestling with herself. How is she? She asked finally. Has she been happy? The question, in its devastating simplicity, struck Michael to the core. She survived. Like you, he answered honestly. She never stopped looking for you. She never stopped hoping. Claire nodded slowly. Tell her to come, she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. But don't expect too much from me. I'm not good with emotions. They took that from me a long time ago. Michael quickly sent Jennifer their location. As they waited, he tried to keep the conversation light, asking about Frank and her other friends on the street. She answered in short, clipped sentences, visibly tense about the impending reunion. 20 minutes later, Michael saw Jennifer approaching along the park's main path. She was wearing jeans and a simple blue shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a sign she had come straight from the airport. Even from a distance, Michael could see she had been crying. Claire followed his gaze and went completely still. For a terrifying moment, Michael thought she was going to run. That's her, Claire whispered, her voice suddenly sounding much younger. It's really her. Jennifer stopped a few yards away, her eyes locked on Claire, one hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob. For a long moment, the two women just stared at each other, as if time and space had ceased to exist around them. Then, in a voice Michael barely recognized, Jennifer breathed a single word, Sara. The name floated on the air, a question, a plea, a prayer. Claire. Sara rose slowly to her feet, her body as taut as a wire about to snap. Michael held his breath, afraid any movement might shatter the fragile moment. Jennifer took one step forward, then another, her hands outstretched but not daring to touch the woman before her. Her eyes scanned Claire's face, searching for and finding the child she had lost within the worn features of the adult. My baby, Jennifer whispered, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. My little girl. Claire remained motionless, her own eyes glistening but dry, as if she had long ago forgotten how to cry. Hello, Mom, she said finally, the words sounding foreign on her lips, like a forgotten language she was trying to recall. Jennifer let out a ragged sob and, unable to hold back any longer, closed the remaining distance and wrapped Claire in an embrace. For a moment, Claire stood rigid, her arms hanging limply at her sides, her body screaming discomfort and alarm. Michael was about to intervene when slowly, hesitantly, Claire lifted her arms and wrapped them weakly around Jennifer. The sob that tore from Claire's throat then was a sound Michael had never heard before, primal and gut-wrenching, as if it came from the depths of a soul that had held everything locked away for far too long. Jennifer held her tighter, murmuring unintelligible words against her hair, rocking her gently just as she had when she was a little girl. Michael discreetly moved away, giving them space for a moment he had dreamed of but never truly believed was possible. He walked a few yards and sat on another bench, where he could see them but not hear their words. He took out his phone and with trembling hands called Sanchez again. "Rob, the things they did to her," he said as soon as the ex-detective answered, his voice cracking. "It's worse than we ever imagined." "I'm sorry, Michael," Sanchez replied, his tone sincere. "How is she?" "Surviving," Michael said, watching as Claire and Jennifer now sat together, their heads bowed in conversation. "She's unbelievably strong, but she's been through hell. Has she mentioned any names, places, anything that can help us identify these people?" "A few things. Idaho, Nevada, but we need to take it slow, Rob. I can't push her right now." "I understand," Sanchez said, "but eventually we're going to need her testimony if we want to catch these bastards." "I know," Michael sighed, "one step at a time." After he hung up, Michael stayed where he was, giving Jennifer and Claire the time they needed. He watched them talk, watched Jennifer occasionally reach out to touch Claire's face or her hair, as if to reassure herself she was real. He also saw how Claire gradually seemed to relax, though she maintained an emotional distance that was painfully obvious even from afar. Half an hour later, Jennifer motioned for him to come over. As he approached, he saw that they had both been crying, but there was a calm between them that hadn't been there before. "Claire has agreed to come to the hotel with us," Jennifer said, taking her daughter's hand, "just to talk." Michael nodded, not trusting his own voice. "But I need to do something first," Claire added, looking across the park. "I need to talk to Frank, explain things. I'm not just going to disappear on him." "Of course," Michael said. "Do you want us to come with you?" Claire shook her head. "I'd rather go alone. Wait for me here." They watched her limp away toward a group of homeless people gathered near a fountain. An older man, Frank, stood up as she approached, and the two spoke for several minutes. The man glanced repeatedly toward Michael and Jennifer, his expression a mixture of suspicion and concern. Finally, to Michael's surprise, Frank gave Claire a brief, firm hug and handed her a small, worn-out backpack. When Claire returned, the backpack was slung over her shoulder. She looked at once more resolute and more frightened. "Frank says to be careful," she remarked with a faint smile. "He thinks you might be con artists." "It's good you have someone who looks out for you," Jennifer said sincerely. "He's saved my life more than once," Claire agreed. "I promised him I'd come back to see him no matter what." The taxi ride to the hotel was spent in a silence thick with unspoken emotions. Claire stared out the window with a look of poorly disguised wonder, as if she were experiencing something entirely new. "I haven't been in a taxi in years," she commented, almost to herself. "I forgot what it feels like." In the hotel lobby, Claire stopped, clearly uncomfortable with the elegant surroundings and the disapproving glances some guests cast at her disheveled appearance. Michael noticed how she instinctively shrank into herself, trying to become invisible, a habit learned from years of survival on the streets. "Don't pay any attention to them," Jennifer said, gently taking her arm. "They don't matter." In the suite, Claire remained standing awkwardly while Michael and Jennifer sat in the chairs by the window. "You can sit anywhere you like," Michael offered, "or take a shower if you want. There are clean towels in the bathroom." A look of profound longing crossed Claire's face. Could I shower first? She asked, as if afraid the offer might be withdrawn. It's been days since I've had a hot shower. Of course, Jennifer said, standing up. I'll show you how it works. While Claire was in the shower, Michael and Jennifer spoke in hushed tones. She needs medical attention, Jennifer whispered. Her leg, the scars, and who knows what else. I know, Michael agreed. But we have to go slow, Jen. She's terrified. Part of her is still waiting for this to be a trap. He paused. She told me a little of what happened to her. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears again. Michael, they sold her. Like she wasn't human. I know, he said, taking her hands in his. She told me something similar. But she's here with us now. We can help her. And if she doesn't want our help? Jennifer asked. She told me flat out she's not sure she wants to come back to Portland with us. Then we'll wait, Michael said firmly. We waited 16 years, Jen. We can wait longer, if we have to. The bathroom door opened, interrupting their conversation. Claire emerged wrapped in a hotel bathrobe, her wet hair framing a face that, while still marked by scars and years of hardship, looked younger and more vulnerable. I forgot what a real shower felt like, she said with a small smile. Thank you. Your clothes are pretty worn out, Jennifer observed. I can lend you something of mine, though it'll be big on you. It's okay, Claire said, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. I'm used to wearing whatever I can find. An awkward silence settled over the room. There were so many questions to ask, so many things to say that none of them knew where to begin. What do you want from me? Claire finally asked, cutting straight to the point. Really, what do you expect to happen now? Michael and Jennifer exchanged a look. We want you to be safe, Michael said. For you to have a chance to heal, to have a better life. I don't need saving, Claire shot back, her tone defensive. I've survived on my own for years. This isn't about saving you, Jennifer intervened softly. It's about giving you choices. You can come to Portland with us, or you can stay here. We can help you find a place to live, get medical care, whatever you need. Claire eyed them with suspicion. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. I'm not the little girl you remember. Because you're our daughter, Jennifer replied simply. And that has never changed, no matter what happened to you or who you are now. Claire looked away, visibly uncomfortable with the emotional intensity. I don't know if I can be part of a family again, she murmured. I don't know how that works. No one is asking you to be something you're not, Michael said. We just want to get to know you, Claire, the person you are now. Claire nodded slowly, processing his words. There's something else you should know, she said after a moment, her voice tense. Something important? Michael and Jennifer waited, exchanging a worried glance. I have a daughter, Claire said, the words falling like stones into the silent room. Her name is Lily. She's 8 years old. The revelation left Michael and Jennifer momentarily speechless. Claire continued, the words now tumbling out in a rush as if she'd been holding them back for too long. She was born when I was in Nevada. I don't know who the father is. Her voice broke slightly. They took her from me when she was 2. They told me they sold her to a family who couldn't have children. A rich family who could give her everything I couldn't. Oh, Claire, Jennifer whispered, her hand covering her mouth. I've been looking for her, Claire continued, a new determination in her eyes. Ever since I escaped. That's why I'm in Seattle. I heard the family that bought her might be here. Do you have any leads? Michael asked, trying to process this new information. Claire shook her head. Just rumors, names I overheard, a couple named Thornton or Thompson, something like that. The husband was supposed to be an executive at some tech company. Michael and Jennifer shared another look, this one of shared resolve. "We'll help you find her," Michael said without hesitation. "We'll hire private investigators. We'll talk to the authorities." "You'd do that?" Claire asked, surprise clear in her voice. "For a granddaughter you don't even know?" "Of course we would," Jennifer said, moving closer to take Claire's hand. "She's part of our family, just like you." For the first time since they had found her, a real smile spread across Claire's face. It was a smile that lit up her eyes and momentarily transformed her features, revealing a glimpse of the girl they had lost so long ago. "Thank you," she said simply. That night, Claire agreed to stay in the hotel suite with them. Jennifer gave her one of her t-shirts to sleep in and they ordered room service. As they ate, the conversation flowed a little more easily. Claire began asking questions about Portland, about the house she'd grown up in, about what had happened during those 16 years. "Is my room still the same?" she asked with a flicker of curiosity. "Exactly the same," Jennifer confirmed. "Your Backstreet Boys posters and everything." Claire let out a soft laugh, a sound Michael had feared he would never hear again. "Oh God, how embarrassing," she said, shaking her head. "I was such a kid." "Your book collection is still there too," Michael added. "You always loved to read. All those Nancy Drew and Harry Potter books." Claire's smile faded slightly. "I forgot what it's like to read for pleasure," she admitted. "At the library, I only read newspapers, searching for any clue about Lily." After dinner, Michael called Robert Sanchez again to inform him of Lily's existence. The ex-detective promised to use his contacts to begin a discreet search. "This changes things, Michael," Sanchez warned. "If the girl was indeed sold, as Claire says, we're talking about a high-level child trafficking operation. Wealthy families, businessmen, people with the power and resources to cover their tracks." "I understand," Michael replied, stepping away so Claire wouldn't overhear. "But we have to find her, Rob. She's my granddaughter." "We'll do everything we can," Sanchez promised. "But this will take time, and we'll need Claire's full cooperation with the authorities." When Michael returned to the room, he found Jennifer and Claire sitting together on the bed, looking at Jennifer's phone. On the screen were old photographs of Sara, birthdays, vacations, everyday moments of a childhood that had been brutally interrupted. "I don't remember this," Claire said, pointing to a photo where she was smiling next to a birthday cake with 11 candles. "My space-themed party." "You were obsessed with being an astronaut that year." Jennifer smiled, swiping to the next picture. "We made your cake in the shape of a rocket ship." Michael sat on Claire's other side, watching, as memories slowly seemed to return to her, fragments of a life she'd been forced to forget. At times, her expressions and gestures were so similar to the Sara they remembered that Michael's heart ached. That night, as Claire slept in one bed and Jennifer in the other, Michael stayed awake in the armchair by the window, watching the lights of Seattle and reflecting on the incredible turns his life had taken in just 48 hours. His daughter had returned from the dead, but with scars so deep they might never fully heal. And somewhere in this very city possibly was his granddaughter. A child who didn't even know she'd been stolen, who had a mother and grandparents searching for her. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with legal, emotional, and practical obstacles. Claire would need therapy, medical care, time to adjust to a life she barely remembered. The search for Lily could take years, or it might not succeed at all. And then there was the matter of justice, finding and prosecuting the people who had destroyed his daughter's life. But for the first time in 16 years, Michael felt hope. His family, shattered by an unimaginable tragedy, had a chance to heal, to rebuild. It wouldn't be easy and nothing would ever be the same, but they were together again, and for now that was enough. The next morning, Michael awoke to the sound of soft voices. Claire and Jennifer were sitting at the table by the window, sharing a breakfast they had ordered from room service. "Morning," Michael said, stretching to ease the ache in his back from a night in the uncomfortable armchair. "Good morning," Claire replied with a small smile. "Mom and I were just talking." The word mom sounded natural on her lips this time, and Michael saw Jennifer's eyes glisten. "I've decided to go to Portland with you," Claire continued, "at least for a while." "Anything," Michael answered immediately, "but on one condition." "I need to keep looking for Lily," Claire said with determination, "and I need your help to do it. I can't start a new life until I find her, or at least until I know she's okay." "Of course," Jennifer nodded. "We'll use every resource we have. Robert is already working on it." "There's something else," Claire added, more hesitant now. "I want you to find the ones who took me. The ones who did this to me and so many other girls. They can't just be free doing the same thing to other families." Michael moved closer and for the first time dared to take Claire's hand in his. "We will," he promised. "Together." Claire squeezed his hand lightly, a small gesture that meant more to Michael than 1,000 words. 3 days later, the three of them boarded a plane to Portland. Claire wore new clothes Jennifer had bought for her and walked with the help of a cane Michael had found at a nearby pharmacy. She was on edge, her eyes constantly scanning the people around her, her body tense at every sudden noise. As the plane took off, Claire gazed out the window, watching Seattle shrink below them. "I'll be back," she murmured, a promise to herself. "I'll be back for you, Lily." Michael, sitting beside her, pretended not to hear, giving her the private moment. But in his heart he made the same promise. They would find Lily. They would get justice. And slowly, step by step, they would try to rebuild what had been stolen from them 16 years ago. It wouldn't be easy. Sara bore scars that would never fully fade. The search for Lily could take years. The path to justice would be fraught with obstacles, but for the first time in 16 years, they had hope. And sometimes hope is enough to start healing. The landing in Portland brought a strange mix of emotions for Claire. Through the airplane window, she watched the city that had been her home. Now a place made nearly unrecognizable by 16 years of absence. The downtown skyscrapers seemed taller, the urban landscape denser, but the surrounding mountains and forests remained like immutable sentinels, just as they were in her fragmented childhood memories. "Does it look different?" Jennifer asked, noticing the intensity of Claire's gaze. "Everything seems smaller," Claire replied with a tentative smile, "and bigger at the same time. It's strange." The taxi ride from the airport took them down streets that stirred vague feelings of familiarity. Occasionally, a building or a park would spark a flash of recognition, like a faded photograph emerging from the depths of her memory. She remained silent for most of the journey, her hands nervously clutching the small backpack that held all her possessions. When the vehicle finally stopped in front of a 2-story Victorian house, painted a grayish-blue with white trim, Claire held her breath. The Miller house, her house, the place she had tried to remember for years, until the pain of the loss became too great and she chose to bury those memories deep. "We're here," Michael announced needlessly, paying the driver while Jennifer helped Claire out of the car. Claire stood motionless on the sidewalk, staring at the house as if it were an apparition. The front yard was more manicured than she remembered, with perfectly pruned rose bushes and a stone path leading to the porch. The swing that used to hang from the large oak tree was gone, but the tree itself had grown, its branches now spreading protectively over much of the yard. "We painted the house a few years ago," Jennifer commented, misinterpreting Claire's expression. "It used to be yellow, remember?" Claire nodded slowly. She remembered the yellow and the green shutters that were now white. She remembered running around that very oak tree, playing hide and seek with friends whose names she could no longer recall. With each step toward the front door, she felt time compressing and expanding simultaneously. 16 years were reduced to a blink and yet stretched out like an impossible chasm. Who had that girl been? The one who once ran through this yard? What was left of her in the woman she was now? Michael opened the door and stepped aside, allowing Claire to enter first. The entryway greeted her with the familiar scent of polished wood and the faint perfume of the vanilla candles her mother had always favored. The walls were painted a darker shade, but the furniture was the same. The oak coat rack, the oval mirror, the small table where they always left the keys and mail. And there, on the wall beside the staircase, were the family photographs. Claire approached slowly, leaning on her cane. Among portraits of Michael and Jennifer through the years were pictures of her. Sara at 5 in a princess costume. Sara at 10 proudly holding a swimming trophy. Sara at 14 her last school portrait before she disappeared. But there were more. To her surprise, Claire found photographs that had never been taken. Digital renderings of what she might have looked like at 18, at 25. Age progressions created by specialists to aid in the search over the years. A forensic artist made them, Michael explained, noticing her gaze. For the missing person posters, he got close on some features, but he didn't capture your essence. Claire nodded, unable to speak as she looked at these alternate versions of herself. Versions that never got to exist, versions without scars, without eyes hardened by trauma, without the weight of experiences no one should ever have to bear. "Do you want to see your room?" Jennifer asked gently, giving her a moment to process. "Or we can leave it for later if you'd rather rest first." "No, I want to see it," Claire answered, gathering her courage. "I need to see it." Climbing the stairs was a challenge with her injured leg, but she refused Michael's help, determined to do it herself. In the second-floor hallway, she stopped before a door with a sign that read, "Sara's Room," decorated with hand-painted stars and planets. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the doorknob. The room was exactly as she remembered it, and yet like a museum exhibit preserved in time. The twin bed with its constellation comforter, the desk under the window where she used to do her homework, the shelves filled with books and small treasures, seashells from vacations, a collection of glass marbles, school competition trophies. Posters on the wall documented the tastes of a teenager from another era. The Backstreet Boys, Titanic, The Lord of the Rings. On the corkboard above the desk were photos of school friends, movie ticket stubs, notes written in a girl's rounded handwriting. Claire moved slowly to the desk and picked up a small photo frame. In it, a 13-year-old Sara smiled alongside her parents in front of the Seattle Space Needle during a family vacation. "We went to Seattle the summer before," Michael began but trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. "I remember," Claire said softly. "We ate at a revolving restaurant at the top. I got a little dizzy." Jennifer smiled, silent tears tracing paths down her cheeks. "You said it was like being in a spaceship," she added. Claire nodded, carefully placing the photograph back in its spot. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on a worn teddy bear resting on the pillow. "Mr. Whiskers?" she murmured, reaching for it. "I'd completely forgotten him." The bear, with one missing eye and fur worn from years of childhood hugs, had been her constant companion since she was 3. Claire held it reverently as if it were a precious artifact from a lost civilization. "I slept with him every night," she said, more to herself than to her parents. "I told him all my secrets." Michael and Jennifer remained silent, aware of the moment's significance. Claire was reconnecting not just with her past, but with parts of herself that had been buried under years of trauma. "We'll leave you for a moment," Jennifer offered, sensing Claire needed space. "We'll be downstairs when you're ready." Claire gave a grateful nod and her parents slipped out, closing the door behind them. Once alone, she sat on the bed, still clutching Mr. Whiskers. The softness of the comforter beneath her, the familiar scent of the room, the stillness found only in long uninhabited spaces. It all combined to create a sense of unreality, as if she had stepped into a dream. "I'm back, Mr. Whiskers," she whispered to the bear, feeling a single tear slide down her cheek. "But I'm not the same." For a long time she sat in silence, letting the memories flow. Afternoons doing homework at that desk, nights reading under the covers with a flashlight, phone conversations with friends about boys and TV shows. Fragments of an ordinary life that had been so abruptly stolen. On the desk she found her old diary, a notebook with a lock that her parents had evidently never opened. The key, she recalled, she had always worn on a chain around her neck, a chain that was taken from her on the first day of her captivity. With trembling hands, she forced the rusted lock and opened the diary to the last entry, dated the day she disappeared. "I am in so much trouble," the first line read, written in a teenager's dramatic script. "Mrs. P gave me detention for talking back, but seriously, who does she think she is? I just said her homework was stupid and everyone agreed with me. Now Mom's going to be mad because I'll be late and miss the beginning of a Buffy. Life is so unfair. At least Jason smiled at me in the hall today." Claire closed the diary, overwhelmed by the innocence of those concerns, by how ordinary and precious they seemed now. Who was Jason? She couldn't remember. What homework had she criticized? It didn't matter. That girl with her small teenage dramas had died the moment unknown hands dragged her into a white van. When she finally went downstairs, she found Michael and Jennifer in the kitchen, making tea, acting with a forced normalcy that betrayed their nervousness. Claire paused in the doorway, observing the domestic scene with the sense of witnessing something that belonged to another life. "I made tea," Jennifer said, turning to her with a tense smile. "Do you still like it with milk and honey?" Claire had no idea if she still liked tea that way. She hadn't had the luxury of preferences for a very long time. "Sounds good," she replied, carefully sitting in one of the kitchen chairs. Michael placed a steaming mug in front of her and sat down across the table. For a moment, an uncomfortable silence settled over the three of them, none quite sure how to proceed. "So, what now?" Claire finally asked, voicing the question that hung in the air between them. Michael and Jennifer exchanged a look. "Now," Michael said, "we take things one day at a time. First, we think you should see a doctor. Your leg needs attention and a general checkup is probably a good idea." Claire tensed visibly. "I don't like doctors," she said, her voice suddenly flat, "or hospitals." Jennifer reached across the table and covered Claire's hand with her own, a tentative gesture of comfort. "We understand, but it's important, Claire, and I promise we'll be with you every step of the way." Claire seemed to consider it, battling years of institutionalized mistrust. "What about my ID?" she asked after a moment. "Technically, Sara Miller is dead, or at least missing. I have no identification, no health insurance, nothing." "Robert is working on that," Michael replied. "Since your disappearance was an open case, there are procedures to re-establish your legal identity. It will take time, but it's possible. And in the meantime," Jennifer added, "he spoke to a doctor friend of ours. She's agreed to see you informally. No paperwork, no difficult questions." Claire nodded slowly, appreciative of their efforts but acutely aware of the enormous practical hurdles they faced. It wasn't just about reclaiming a legal identity. It was about rebuilding an entire existence from scratch. "And Lily?" she asked, her voice returning to the one subject that mattered most. Have you heard anything? Robert has started looking, Michael answered. He's searching for records of irregular or sudden adoptions in the Seattle area around the date you mentioned. He's also tracking down families with the last name you remembered. It's not much, Claire admitted, frustration lacing her tone. I've been searching for years with fewer resources and found nothing. You have help now, Jennifer said firmly, and resources you didn't have before. We are not giving up, Claire. That evening, after a simple dinner during which Claire barely spoke, exploring the home-cooked meal as if it were an exotic novelty, Jennifer showed her to the guest room they had prepared. We thought you might prefer this to your old room, she explained, so you can have your own space without so many memories attached. The room was simple but comfortable. A double bed, a closet, a dresser, and a small desk by the window overlooking the backyard. The walls were painted a soft sage green, a blank canvas awaiting personal touches. Thank you, Claire said, her voice sincere. It's perfect. I left a few things for you in the bathroom, Jennifer added. And there are pajamas in the top drawer. They're new. Claire nodded, moved by the thoughtfulness but overwhelmed by the sheer normalcy of it all. After saying goodnight to her parents, she sat on the edge of the bed, unable to fully process the turn her life had taken in just a few days. The silence of the house was different from the silence of the Seattle streets. There was always noise, traffic, sirens, the conversations of strangers. A constant urban hum that had become a strange sort of lullaby. Here the silence was nearly absolute, broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling and the distant hoot of an owl. She lay down without changing, too emotionally and physically exhausted to do anything more. The mattress was so soft, so different from the cardboard pallets and park benches where she had slept for years, that it was almost uncomfortable. The darkness in the room was total, with no city lights constantly filtering through. She closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind replayed the events of the last few days, obsessively trying to make sense of how her reality had shifted so drastically. Was this real? Or would she wake up tomorrow in a Seattle alleyway, discovering it had all been an elaborate dream, induced by hunger or cold? And if it was real, could she truly adapt to this new life? Could she learn to be part of a family again? To trust, to live in a house with routines and expectations? Could she be the daughter Michael and Jennifer hoped to reclaim? More importantly, would she find Lily? And could she offer her something better than what she herself had experienced? What would it mean for the child to be torn from the only family she had ever known? Even if that family had obtained her through illicit means. The question circled in her mind unanswered until finally, from sheer exhaustion, she sank into a restless sleep populated by shadows chasing her down unfamiliar streets. The next morning arrived with the soft patter of rain against the window pane. Claire woke disoriented, a moment of terror gripping her as she failed to recognize her surroundings. Then the memories flooded back. Portland. Her parents. The house. It hadn't been a dream. She rose, aching, her injured leg protesting after the previous day's activity. In the attached bathroom, she found new toiletries laid out for her. A toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, body lotion. Small luxuries she hadn't been able to afford in years. The hot shower was, once again, a revelation. A pleasure so simple and yet so profound it almost brought her to tears of gratitude. She dressed in clothes Jennifer had left for her, jeans, a soft t-shirt, a blue sweater. Everything was a size too big, but it was clean and smelled of fabric softener, another scent she had forgotten. When she came down to the kitchen, she found Jennifer making breakfast and Michael reading the newspaper at the table. It was a scene so domestic, so normal that for a moment she froze in the doorway, feeling like an intruder on a picture-perfect scene. "Good morning," Jennifer said, noticing her. "How did you sleep?" "Fine." Claire lied automatically, years of survival having taught her never to show vulnerability. Thank you. Eggs and toast? Jennifer offered. Or would you prefer cereal? Whatever's fine, Claire replied, carefully lowering herself into a chair. I'm not picky about food. Michael lowered his paper and smiled at her, though Claire noticed the dark circles under his eyes, a sign he hadn't slept well either. Robert called early, he said, getting straight to the matter he knew she cared about most. He's following a lead on a family named Thompson who adopted a little girl about 6 years ago. They live in Bellevue, a suburb of Seattle. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Lily? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, daring not to hope. We don't know yet, Michael said honestly. The age is about right, but we need more information. I need to go back to Seattle, Claire said immediately, starting to rise. If there's any chance it's her… Claire, Jennifer interjected, placing a plate of scrambled eggs in front of her. We understand how you feel, but we have to be careful. We can't just show up on this family's doorstep without being sure. Why not? Claire challenged, maternal urgency overriding all caution. I've waited years, searched for years. Because if this child was in fact illegally acquired, Michael said, choosing his words carefully, the people who have her might have resources and connections. If we alert them prematurely, they could disappear with her. Or worse. Claire froze, the validity of his argument hitting home. She had learned the hard way that acting on impulse rarely ended well. So what do we do? She asked, trying to rein in her frustration. Robert is verifying adoption records looking for inconsistencies, Michael explained. And he's discreetly hired a private investigator in Seattle who can watch the house, get a photograph of the girl so you can confirm if it might be Lily. Claire nodded slowly, forcing herself to eat despite the knot in her stomach. The thought that Lily could be so close, living just a few hours away, was both hopeful and torturous. In the meantime, Jennifer continued, we have an appointment with Dr. Simmons this afternoon. She's the doctor I mentioned, an old friend who agreed to see you quietly. Claire winced, but gave a resigned nod. And after that, Michael added, I thought maybe we could go buy you some clothes that actually fit, if you're up for it, of course. The suggestion startled Claire. It had been so long since she had bought new clothes, since she had possessed the freedom to choose what she wore, that the idea was almost overwhelming. I guess so, she answered, uncertain. But you don't have to spend money on me. Jennifer covered her hand again, a gesture that was starting to feel familiar. Claire, you're our daughter, she said simply. Taking care of you isn't an expense. It's what we've always wanted to do. After breakfast, while Jennifer cleared the dishes, Michael handed Claire a new cell phone. I thought you might need this, he explained. Our numbers are already saved in it. You can use it for whatever you need. Claire took the device with some hesitation. She had used payphones on occasion, but she had never owned a phone of her own. Thank you, she said, examining the sleek object with curiosity. It's pretty intuitive, Michael said with a small smile. And we're here to help you figure it out. Mid-morning, as Claire rested in the living room, distractedly flipping through a magazine to keep her hands busy, Michael's phone rang. From the look on his face as he answered, Claire knew instantly it was important. I understand, she heard him say. Are you sure? Yes, of course. Keep me posted. When he hung up, his eyes met hers from across the room. That was Robert, he said, his voice carefully controlled. The investigator in Seattle got a photograph of the Thompson girl. He's sending it now. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. Her hand tightened around the magazine she was holding, crinkling the pages. When can I see it? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Any second now, Michael replied, his gaze fixed on his phone. He had barely finished the sentence when the chime of an incoming message sounded. With fingers that suddenly seemed clumsy, he opened the email and enlarged the attached image. The photograph showed a girl of about 8 years old walking out of a private school accompanied by a well-dressed woman who was presumably Mrs. Thompson. The girl had light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, a navy blue school uniform, and was carrying a backpack decorated with cartoon characters. Michael turned the phone toward Claire. She took it with trembling hands. For a long moment she studied the image in silence, her eyes tracing every detail of the little girl's face. "It's her," she said finally, her voice cracking with emotion. "It's Lily." The certainty in Claire's voice was absolute. There was no doubt, no hesitation. The girl in the photograph with her pristine uniform and shy smile was her daughter. Michael watched as Claire's fingers delicately traced the outline of the face on the screen, as if she could somehow transmit a caress through the glass and pixels. "She has your smile," he commented softly, leaning in to get a better look. "And that dimple on her left cheek." Claire nodded, unable to speak as a wave of emotion washed over her. The child was beautiful, her face a combination of features Claire recognized as her own, alongside others that belonged to an unknown father. Her eyes, large and expressive, were the same almond shape as Claire's, though they were a light blue instead of green. "She looks happy," Claire finally managed, a mixture of relief and pain in her voice. "Healthy." Jennifer, who had approached quietly, placed a hand on Claire's shoulder. "She's beautiful," she said, her own voice thick with emotion. "Our granddaughter." The word hung in the room, heavy with meaning. Granddaughter, family, blood, a connection that transcended the years of separation and the chasm of experience that lay between them. "What do we know about them?" Claire asked, her eyes never leaving the photograph. "The Thompsons." Michael took a seat beside her, his expression turning serious. "Robert is gathering information," he replied. "What we know so far is that Gerald Thompson is a high-level executive at a tech firm in Seattle. His wife, Caroline Thompson, is a corporate lawyer. They live in Bellevue in a gated community. Lily attends Lakeside Academy, a very exclusive private school." Claire listened, trying to reconcile this image of a privileged life with the reality of how the child had come to be in that family. "Do they have other children?" she asked. "No," Michael said. "And according to preliminary records, they adopted Lily when she was almost 3. The adoption was processed through an agency that's been investigated several times for irregularities, though they've never been formally charged." Claire closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the information. 3 years old, Lily had been with the Thompsons for nearly 6 years, 2/3 of her short life. To her, they were her family, the only parents she likely remembered. "Do you think they knew?" she asked, opening her eyes again. "Do you think the Thompsons knew she was trafficked?" Michael and Jennifer exchanged a look. "It's hard to say for certain," Michael answered carefully. "They could have been deceived by the agency, believed it was a legitimate adoption. Or they could have known exactly what they were doing," Claire added bitterly. "Rich people used to buying whatever they want, even if it's a child." "What matters now," Jennifer intervened, trying to soothe the rising tension, "is that we establish a plan. We need hard evidence, documentation before we make any move." Claire stood up abruptly, frustration evident in every line of her body. "She is my daughter," she exclaimed. "The only evidence I need is that I recognize her, that she was stolen from me." "We know, Claire," Michael said calmly, "and we believe you. But the legal system requires proof beyond your recognition. We need to build a solid case." "How long?" Claire asked, her voice breaking. "How much longer do I have to wait?" Robert is fast-tracking everything he can, Michael assured her. He's already reached out to a prosecutor in Seattle who specializes in human trafficking cases. But we have to be strategic. If we alert the Thompsons prematurely, they could disappear with her. Claire finished reciting the earlier warning. Her voice was flat with a terrible understanding. I get it, but I can't just sit here knowing she's so close. Jennifer moved closer, cautiously taking Claire's hands in her own. What if we go to Seattle? She suggested, her voice soft. We could get a hotel, be nearby while the case moves forward. That way you'd feel like you were doing something, like you were closer to her. Claire seemed to consider the offer, her body relaxing slightly against the tension that had held it captive. Could we? She asked, her gaze shifting to Michael. Really? Of course, he nodded. I can arrange to work remotely for a while. The important thing is that we're in this together. For the first time since she had seen the photograph, a faint smile touched Claire's lips. Thank you, she said simply. The rest of the day passed in a state of restrained anxiety. Claire could barely focus during the visit to Dr. Simmons, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, who examined her injured leg and performed a general checkup. The fracture never healed properly, the doctor explained, studying the x-rays. Ideally, you'll need surgery to correct it, but for now, we can start with physical therapy and pain medication. Claire nodded absently, her mind miles away in a private school in Bellevue where her daughter was learning math and science, oblivious to the storm gathering over her life. After the appointment, Michael kept his promise to take her shopping for clothes. In the mall, Claire felt overwhelmed by the choices, the bright lights and ambient music, the sheer, absolute normality of something as mundane as picking out a pair of jeans. Jennifer guided her patiently, helping her select basic items without pushing too hard. That evening, after a dinner Claire barely touched, Michael received another call from Robert. They've scheduled a meeting with the district attorney for tomorrow afternoon, he reported after hanging up. In Seattle. He wants to hear your testimony directly, Claire. Claire, who had been gazing at Lily's photo on the phone they'd given her, looked up with a newfound determination. I'll be ready, she affirmed. I'll tell them everything they need to know. It won't be easy, Michael warned gently. You'll have to relive painful things, go into detail about what happened to you. I've lived with those memories every single day for 16 years. Claire replied, her voice firm. I can stand to talk about them if it means getting my daughter back. The next morning, the three of them began the journey back to Seattle. At the airport, Claire was visibly tense, her eyes constantly scanning the people around her, her hands clutching the small bag that held the few belongings she'd brought from Portland. The cane she now used regularly gave her a degree of physical stability, but her emotional unease was palpable. Are you okay? Jennifer asked, noticing how Claire tensed even further during the security screening. I don't like enclosed spaces full of strangers, Claire answered in a low voice, or authorities, or being asked questions. Jennifer nodded in understanding, resisting the urge to take her hand, aware that Claire was still uncomfortable with casual physical contact. The flight was short, but for Claire it felt like an eternity. Upon their arrival in Seattle, a car sent by Robert was waiting to take them directly to the district attorney's office. The government building, with its imposing architecture and marble corridors, triggered an immediate sense of alarm in Claire. Years of living on the fringes of society, avoiding any contact with the law, had ingrained in her an instinctive fear of institutions like this. Deep breaths, Michael advised, noticing her pallor. We're right here with you. The office of District Attorney James Harrington was spacious and austere, with large windows offering a panoramic view of downtown Seattle. The man who greeted them was younger than Claire had anticipated, perhaps in his early 40s, with a serious but compassionate expression. "Miss Miller," he said, extending a hand. "Or do you prefer Miss Johnson?" "Claire is fine," she replied, briefly shaking his hand before retreating to a comfortable distance. Robert Sanchez was already there, his familiar presence offering a small measure of comfort. Beside him sat a woman who was introduced as Detective Elena Ramirez, a specialist in human trafficking cases. "Before we begin," Harrington said, gesturing for them to sit, "I want you to know that we will handle this case with the utmost sensitivity and discretion. We understand how delicate this situation is, especially with a minor involved." Claire nodded stiffly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I just want my daughter back," she said simply. "I understand," Harrington replied. "But to build a strong case, we need to establish several facts. First, we need to legally confirm that you are Sara Miller, the girl who disappeared in 1998. "We've already started that process," Robert interjected. "We have the original case files and we can perform DNA tests to confirm her parentage with Michael and Jennifer." "Good," Harrington nodded. "Second, we need to establish the exact circumstances of your abduction and what happened afterward, especially regarding the birth of your daughter and how she was separated from you." Claire took a deep breath, steeling herself to relive the horrors she had tried so hard to bury. "I was taken walking home from school," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "They took me to a house first, somewhere in Idaho. There were other girls there, like me." For the next 2 hours, Claire recounted her story, detailing her captivity, the systematic abuse, the drugs used to control her, the years of exploitation. She described how, at 22, she discovered she was pregnant, and how, contrary to what she expected, her captors allowed the pregnancy to continue. "They told me a baby was worth money," she explained, her voice now devoid of all emotion, as if narrating someone else's life. "More money than I could make in months." She described Lily's birth in a basement converted into a crude infirmary, with no proper medical care. She told them how they let her raise the little girl for 2 years, forging a bond that would then be brutally severed. "One day they just took her," she said, her voice finally breaking. "They told me she'd been sold to a rich family, that they paid well for a healthy child. They told me I should be grateful, that she would have a better life than I could ever give her." The silence that followed her testimony was thick, heavy with horror and compassion. Jennifer was crying silently, while Michael's face was a stone mask that barely concealed his rage. Detective Ramirez took meticulous notes, her expression professionally neutral, though her eyes betrayed a contained fury. "Do you remember names?" she finally asked. "Of the people who took you? The ones running these operations?" Claire nodded slowly. "Some," she answered. "They kept us deliberately uninformed, but over time you hear things." "The ones in charge called themselves Marcus and Diana Reed, though I doubt those were their real names. There were others, a man named Victor who handled the training, a woman named Grace who managed the finances, and in Nevada the man who ran the massage parlors went by Mr. Chen." Harrington and Ramirez exchanged a meaningful look. "Those names match an ongoing federal investigation into an interstate trafficking ring," Ramirez commented. "They've never been able to locate the Reeds, but we have informants who have mentioned them." "Could you identify them?" Harrington asked. "If we showed you photographs?" "Yes," Claire replied without hesitation. "I will never forget their faces." The meeting continued with more specific questions about the Thompsons, about the little Claire knew of the transaction that had torn Lily from her. "They told me a couple from Seattle paid $100,000 for her," Claire recalled, "that the husband was some kind of tech executive. I heard the name Thompson mentioned once, when they thought I was sedated." Finally, when Claire looked to be on the verge of exhaustion, Harrington concluded the session. "We have enough to begin," he said, his tone softening. "Detective Ramirez will launch an official investigation into the Thompsons, and we will coordinate with federal authorities regarding the connection to the larger trafficking network." "How long?" Claire asked, the question that was always on her lips. "How long until I can see Lily?" Harrington glanced at Ramirez before answering. "I can't give you an exact timeline," he admitted. "These cases are complicated. We need concrete evidence that the Thompsons knew they were illegally acquiring a child, and even then, we have to consider the child's welfare." "What does that mean?" Claire asked, her body going rigid. "It means the courts will consider what is best for Lily," Harrington explained carefully. "She has been with the Thompsons for 6 years. To her, they are her parents. Any transition will have to be handled with extreme care." Claire's face went pale. "Are you saying I might not get her back?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Even if you prove she was stolen?" "I'm saying the courts will weigh multiple factors," Harrington replied. "Your biological link is important, of course, but they will also consider Lily's current stability, her emotional well-being, and the fact that I live on the streets, right?" Claire interrupted bitterly. "That I don't have a job or a home or any way to support her." "Claire," Michael interjected, "you are not alone in this. We will support you and Lily." "Mr. Harrington is right to be cautious," Robert added. "But we have a strong case, and most importantly, you are her biological mother. That carries a great deal of weight in any court." Claire nodded mechanically, but the seed of doubt had been planted. A new fear added to the mountain of anxiety she already carried. As they left the building, Claire stopped abruptly on the steps. "I need to see her," she said, her voice firm but brittle. "Not from a distance, not in a photograph. I need to see her up close." Michael and Jennifer exchanged a worried glance. "Claire, the DA was very clear," Michael began. "Any unauthorized contact could compromise the case." "I didn't say I was going to talk to her," Claire shot back. I need to see her to know she's okay, that she's real." "It's too risky," Jennifer insisted. "If the Thompsons see you—" "They won't see me," Claire stated flatly. "I spent years being invisible on the streets. I know how to go unnoticed." The determination in her face was absolute. Michael sighed, recognizing that there was no dissuading her. "At least don't go alone," he pleaded. "Let me go with you." Claire considered his offer and finally nodded. "Tomorrow," she said. "According to the information we have, Lily gets out of school at 3:15 p.m. We can watch from the park across the street." Michael agreed, though the worry never left his face. That night, in the hotel room they had booked for their stay in Seattle, Claire lay awake for hours, staring at the photograph of Lily, every detail of the girl's face now etched into her memory. The way her hair fell across her forehead, the slight tilt of her smile, the life in her eyes. Would Lily recognize her if she saw her? Was there any memory left, however faint, of her real mother? Of the 2 years they had spent together before being torn apart? The question swirled without answer as exhaustion finally claimed her, pulling her into a sleep filled with images of little girls running, always just out of her reach. The next morning, the tension was palpable as Michael and Claire prepared for their unauthorized mission. Jennifer had reluctantly agreed to stay at the hotel, though her concern was obvious. "Be careful," she warned, giving Claire a brief hug. "If anything seems suspicious or if you think someone has seen you, leave immediately." Claire nodded, adjusting the baseball cap she had bought as part of her disguise. In jeans, a simple t-shirt, a gray jacket, and the cap pulled low, she looked like a completely different person from the homeless woman Michael had found just days ago. They took a taxi to within a few blocks of Lakeside Academy, walking the rest of the way to avoid drawing attention. The school, an impressive complex of red brick and limestone buildings surrounded by immaculate grounds, screamed privilege and exclusivity from every angle. Michael and Claire positioned themselves strategically in a small park across the street, sitting on a bench that offered a clear view of the main entrance without being too exposed. Claire kept her head slightly bowed, the cap shading her face, while Michael pretended to read a newspaper. 15 minutes, Michael murmured, checking his watch. Claire nodded, her body wound as tight as a wire. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness as they watched parents and drivers begin to gather. Some waited in luxury SUVs. Others stood patiently beside cars that cost more than most people earned in years. At 3:10, the first wave of students began to emerge. Children of various ages in crisp navy blue uniforms, some running to their parents, others walking in groups, laughing and talking animatedly. And then she saw her. Lily came through the main doors, chatting with another girl her age. She wore the same uniform as in the photograph, but today her hair was in a braid instead of a ponytail. Her backpack bounced lightly against her shoulders as she walked, gesturing excitedly as she told a story that made her friend laugh. Claire's breath caught in her throat, her hand instinctively gripping Michael's arm. She was more beautiful in person, more real, more alive. Her laugh, audible even from this distance, was like wind chimes. "It's her," Claire whispered, tears blurring her vision. "My Lily." Michael covered Claire's hand with his own, offering silent support as they watched the girl say goodbye to her friend and walk toward a black Mercedes parked nearby. The door opened and an elegant woman, Carolyn Thompson presumably, stepped out to greet Lily with a hug, which the little girl returned naturally. Claire watched the exchange with a mixture of pain and relief. It was clear Lily was loved, that she was well cared for, but seeing another woman in the role that should have been hers opened a wound that no amount of comfort could close. As the Mercedes pulled away, carrying Lily with it, Claire remained motionless, her eyes fixed on the spot where she had last seen her daughter. "Now I believe," he said at last, his voice a mere whisper. "Now I believe I can truly get her back." But what neither of them noticed was the figure watching them from a car parked across the street. A man in a dark suit who had been discreetly taking photographs with a long-range camera. A man who now pulled out his phone and dialed a number, his eyes never leaving Claire and Mikkel as he reported to someone on the other end of the line. "You were right," the man said. "Boss, it's her, and she's not alone." The drive back to the hotel passed in an emotionally charged silence. Claire, overwhelmed by having seen Lily in person, alternated between silent tears and a steely determination that hardened her features. Mikkel respected her need to process the experience, limiting himself to an occasional squeeze of her hand whenever her emotions seemed to overwhelm her. Jennifer was waiting for them anxiously in the hotel room, jumping to her feet the moment the door opened. "Did you see her?" she asked immediately, studying both of their expressions. Claire nodded, sinking heavily into a chair as she removed her cap. "She's perfect," she said simply, a trembling smile on her lips. "She's exactly as I imagined, but better, more real. She's healthy and seems happy," Mikkel added, placing a comforting hand on Jennifer's shoulder. "She's a beautiful girl. She has my eyes," Claire continued, the emotion finally breaking through her usual reserve. "The shape, though not the color. And when she smiles, her smile is just like mine was when I was little." Jennifer sat beside Claire, visibly moved. "Tell me more," she requested softly. "Everything you saw." As Claire described every detail she had managed to observe in those brief minutes, the way Lily moved, Her laugh, how she gestured when she spoke, the spark of intelligence in her eyes. She didn't notice the worried glance Mikkel shot his wife. Jennifer, however, caught the signal and gave an imperceptible nod, understanding there was something more Mikkel needed to tell her in private. When Claire finally excused herself to the bathroom to freshen up, Mikkel took the opportunity to speak quietly with Jennifer. "There was someone else watching," he said, the concern clear in his voice. "I'm not sure, but I think someone was photographing us from a car." Jennifer paled. "Do you think they work for the Thompsons? Or someone else?" "I don't know," Mikkel replied grimly. "But if I'm right, our presence here is no longer a secret." "We should tell Robert," Jennifer suggested, her voice dropping even lower as she heard the water in the bathroom shut off. "Maybe the DA too," Mikkel agreed, pulling out his phone to send a message to Sanchez. The reply came almost immediately, a request to meet in the hotel lobby in 15 minutes. When Claire came out of the bathroom, Mikkel informed her of the impending meeting, choosing his words carefully so as not to alarm her. "Robert wants to give us an update on the case," he said, omitting his suspicions. "He'll meet us downstairs in a few minutes." Claire nodded distractedly, still lost in thought about her encounter with Lily. The three of them went down to the lobby, where Robert Sanchez was already waiting, his serious expression confirming Mikkel's suspicion that something was wrong. "We need to speak privately," Sanchez said without preamble, guiding them toward a small, empty conference room off the lobby. Once inside, with the door closed, the ex-detective looked at them gravely. "I just received a tip from a source in the police department," he began. "Gerald Thompson filed a complaint this afternoon. He's alleging that a woman matching Claire's description has been harassing his family, specifically watching his daughter outside her school." Claire tensed, the color draining from her face. "How did he know we were there?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "That confirms my suspicions," Mikkel cut in. "Someone was watching us. They photographed us." Sanchez nodded grimly. "Thompson is a powerful man with a lot of resources. He likely hired private security the moment he learned an investigation was underway." "But how did he find out?" Jennifer pressed. "The investigation was supposed to be discreet." "There are leaks everywhere," Sanchez answered bitterly, "especially when there's money involved. Thompson has connections in the DA's office, in the police department. It wouldn't surprise me if he knew about our meeting with Harrington the minute it was over." Claire rose abruptly, pacing with her cane, the anxiety rolling off her in almost tangible waves. "What does this mean for the case?" she finally asked. "For Lily?" "It complicates things," he admitted. "Thompson is going on the offensive, painting you as an unstable stalker. He's building a narrative he can use later if this goes to court." "But that's absurd," Jennifer exclaimed. "Claire is Lily's biological mother. She was separated from her against her will." "I know," Sanchez agreed, "and Harrington knows. But Thompson is using pressure tactics. He's already filed for a temporary restraining order against you." The news landed like a bomb in the small room. Claire stopped dead in her tracks, the color completely abandoning her face. "A restraining order?" she repeated in disbelief. "They're forbidding me from going near my own daughter?" "It's a preventative measure while his complaint is investigated," Sanchez explained. "It doesn't mean it will be permanent or even that it's valid. But for now, I have to stay away," Claire finished, defeat coloring her voice. "It's just a temporary setback," Mikkel assured her, moving to her side. "Harrington is still building the case. The DNA samples we took yesterday will confirm you're Sara Miller and Lily's biological mother. But in the meantime, Thompson has the upper hand," Claire pointed out bitterly. "Him with his luxurious house and perfect lifestyle against me, a homeless woman who, until a few days ago was living on the streets. You're not alone, Jennifer reminded her firmly. You have us, and we have resources too. Sanchez cleared his throat, drawing their attention again. There's something else you need to know, he said, his expression growing even more serious. Detective Ramirez has been digging into the Thompsons and she found something disturbing. The three of them looked at him expectantly, the tension in the room ratcheting up. Gerald Thompson has been the subject of a covert federal investigation for the last 8 months, Sanchez revealed. Not for Lily's adoption, but for possible connections to a money laundering ring, one tied to the same human trafficking group that held you, Claire. The revelation drew gasped breaths from Mikkel and Jennifer. Claire, however, remained strangely still, as if she had somehow expected something like this. It's not a coincidence, is it? She said finally. That Lily ended up with him, specifically. It doesn't seem to be, Sanchez confirmed. The current theory is that Thompson wasn't just a client of these networks for illegal adoptions. He may have been a financial facilitator, someone who helped move and launder the money they made from trafficking. And Carolyn Thompson? Mikkel asked. The wife? It's unclear if she's involved or just an ignorant spouse, Sanchez replied. As a corporate lawyer, she might have helped inadvertently, but there's no concrete evidence she knew the nature of the operations. Claire sank back into her chair, the weight of the revelations clearly overwhelming. Is Lily in danger? She asked, the fear plain in her voice. If Thompson is involved with these people, there's no indication Lily has suffered any kind of abuse or neglect, Sanchez assured her quickly. On the contrary, all reports indicate she's a well-cared-for and seemingly happy child. Whatever else he is, Thompson appears to be a devoted father. A devoted father who bought a stolen child, Claire noted with bitterness. Which gives us significant legal leverage, Sanchez countered. If we can directly link Thompson to the network that held you captive, the custody case becomes considerably stronger. What are the next steps? Mikkel asked, ever the pragmatist. Harrington is coordinating with the FBI to merge the two investigations, Sanchez explained. It's a positive development for us. Federal resources are far more extensive and they have jurisdiction over interstate crimes like human trafficking. And in the meantime? Claire asked. What am I supposed to do, just sit here and wait while Thompson could potentially run off with my daughter at any moment? Actually, that's another reason I wanted to see you, Sanchez replied. The FBI has placed the Thompsons under discreet surveillance. They can't go anywhere without being watched, and they've frozen some of his accounts as part of the money laundering investigation, limiting his ability to disappear. This information seemed to calm Claire slightly, though the tension didn't leave her shoulders completely. How long? She asked, the question that seemed to define her existence lately. I can't give you an exact timeline, Sanchez admitted, but things are moving quickly, faster than is normal for cases like this. After Sanchez left, promising to keep them updated, the three returned to their hotel room. Claire immediately retreated to the small balcony, needing space to process everything that had happened. From there, she could see part of the Seattle skyline, the city lights beginning to sparkle as the sun went down. Somewhere among those buildings and out in the manicured suburbs was Lily, perhaps getting ready for dinner, doing her homework, or simply playing, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her. Oblivious to the fact that the man she called father might be connected to the very people who had destroyed her real mother's life. The irony was painful and twisted. For years, Claire had searched for Lily all over Seattle, sleeping in alleys, digging through trash, enduring cold and hunger, while her daughter lived in luxury just a few miles away. And now that she had finally found her, a restraining order prevented her from getting any closer. Jennifer joined her on the balcony, silently offering a cup of hot tea. What are you thinking about? She asked softly after a moment. Claire took a sip of the tea before answering. About how unfair it all is, she said finally. Thompson was able to buy my daughter, give her a privileged life, and now he's using that same privilege and power to keep me away from her. Jennifer nodded, understanding the frustration. Justice takes strange roads sometimes, she commented. But in the end, the truth has a way of coming out. And what if it's not enough? Claire asked, voicing her greatest fear. What if, despite all the evidence, despite everything Thompson has done, they decide Lily is better off with them? After all, what can I offer her? I have no home, no job, no education. You have love, Jennifer replied simply. You have a family that supports you. You have a determination and strength few people could ever imagine, and you have the truth on your side. Claire managed a weak smile, grateful for the comfort, even if she wasn't entirely convinced. Do you know what scares me the most? She confessed after a long silence. That when I can finally talk to her, she won't want me, that she'll hate me for disrupting her perfect life. That's an understandable fear, Jennifer admitted, but children are surprisingly resilient and understanding when things are explained to them properly. And the bond between a mother and child is powerful, Claire. More than you can imagine. Before Claire could respond, the hotel room door opened and Mikkel hurried in, his expression a mixture of urgency and hope. I just got a call from Sanchez, he announced. The FBI is raiding the Thompsons' house tomorrow morning. They found concrete evidence linking Gerald to the money laundering ring. Claire shot to her feet, nearly spilling her tea. What does that mean for Lily? She asked immediately. If they arrest Gerald, which Sanchez says is likely, social services will step in to determine Lily's situation, Mikkel explained, especially now that there's an open investigation into her adoption. Will they put her in a foster home? Claire asked, horrified at the thought. It's a temporary possibility, Mikkel admitted, but Sanchez says Harrington is already preparing a petition to grant you provisional custody, given that the preliminary DNA tests have already confirmed you're her biological mother. A ray of hope illuminated Claire's face for the first time in hours. That means I could be with her soon? Really be with her? It's possible, Mikkel replied, not wanting to raise her hopes too high. But there will be hearings, evaluations. The system moves at its own pace. But it's progress, Jennifer insisted, squeezing Claire's hand, a huge step forward. That night, none of the three slept well. Claire oscillated between periods of cautious hope and moments of sheer panic. What if Thompson was tipped off about the raid and fled with Lily? What if he destroyed crucial evidence? What if he used his connections to evade justice yet again? At 5 a.m, unable to bear the waiting any longer, Claire finally got up and dressed in silence. Mikkel, who hadn't slept much either, watched her from the bed. Where are you going? He asked softly so as not to wake Jennifer. I need to walk, Claire replied. Clear my head, I can't just lie here anymore. Mikkel nodded in understanding. Want some company? Claire considered it for a moment before shaking her head. I'd rather be alone for a bit. I won't go far, I promise. Take your phone, Mikkel said, and call us if you need anything at all. Claire nodded, slipping the phone into her jacket pocket before quietly leaving the room. Dawn was just beginning to break as Claire stepped out of the hotel, the cool morning air a welcome relief after the stifling night. She walked aimlessly through the near-empty streets, her cane tapping a steady rhythm on the pavement, a beat for her turbulent thoughts. Without realizing it, her steps led her back toward the park where she had watched Lily just the day before. It was far too early for anyone to be at the school, of course, but some part of her needed to be near the place, as if the proximity itself could somehow connect her to her daughter. She sat on the same bench, watching the silent school building in the distance. What would it be like for Lily, waking up this morning not knowing her life was about to be turned upside down? What would they tell her when federal agents stormed their home? How could anyone possibly explain this to an 8-year-old girl? She was so lost in these thoughts that she didn't notice the black car that had pulled silently to the nearby curb, nor the man approaching from behind until it was too late. Claire Johnson, a man's voice startled her. Or should I say, Sara Miller. Claire spun around, her body instinctively tensing, ready for fight or flight. The man before her was tall, middle-aged, and dressed in an expensive suit that screamed money and power. His face, while conventionally handsome, held a calculating coldness that sent a shiver down her spine. Gerald Thompson, she recognized, though she had never seen him in person. There was something in his posture, in the sheer arrogance with which he regarded her, that confirmed his identity. "Funny, finding you here," Thompson continued, sitting uninvited at the other end of the bench. "Especially considering the restraining order. As far as I know, the school is empty at this hour," Claire replied, her voice steady despite the knot of fear tightening in her stomach. "And Lily isn't here." Thompson smirked, a gesture that never reached his eyes. "Always so literal, those of you without legal training," he commented condescendingly. "The order prohibits you from approaching my daughter or places she regularly frequents. Like this school." Claire clenched her jaw, fighting the urge to correct him, to scream that Lily was not his daughter. Instead, she chose calm. "What do you want, Mr. Thompson?" she asked directly. "Did you come here just to intimidate me?" Thompson seemed slightly taken aback by her frankness, but recovered quickly. "I came to offer you a deal," he replied, his tone shifting to business. "One that could benefit us both." Claire watched him with deep suspicion but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I know about the investigation," Thompson said. "I know the FBI plans to pay me a visit this morning, and I know that eventually, with enough legal resources and time, you could potentially get some form of shared custody of Lily." Claire's heart leaped. Shared custody. She wanted full custody. She wanted her daughter back, not just scraps of time with her. "What's your point?" she asked coldly. "My point is, I can make all of this far more difficult and painful than it needs to be," Thompson answered, all pretense of civility gone from his voice. "I can drag this through the courts for years. I can ensure that every aspect of your past and present life is exposed and scrutinized. Every mistake, every questionable decision, every moment of weakness, I can make the process so traumatic for Lily that any judge with a shred of sense will determine that keeping her away from you is in her best interest." Rage boiled inside Claire, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Oh," she asked, knowing an alternative was coming. "Or," Thompson continued, "we can come to an arrangement, one that allows me to maintain a relationship with the child I've raised for 6 years and gives you what you want. Legal recognition as her mother and regular access to her." "Why would you make such an offer?" Claire asked, her suspicion mounting. "If you're so confident you can win in court." Thompson smiled again, this time with a hint of reluctant respect. "Because even battles you can win have costs," he replied. "Negative publicity, stress for my wife, trauma for Lily, and frankly because I need to be able to negotiate with the FBI, and having your cooperation could prove valuable." So there it was. Thompson wasn't worried about Lily or what was best for her. He was worried about saving himself. "What kind of deal are you proposing exactly?" Claire asked, buying time as her mind raced. "Simple," Thompson said. "You testify that you never knew who bought Lily, that I had no knowledge of the illegal circumstances of her origin, that as far as you know, I believed I was legally adopting a child in need. In return, I won't contest your claim of biological maternity, and I will agree to a phased-in shared custody agreement. Claire stared at him, barely able to believe what she was hearing. Did he really think she would betray the truth? That she would protect the man who had bought her stolen daughter? I need time to think about it, she said finally, knowing that a direct refusal might provoke drastic action from him. Thompson checked his watch with studied indifference. You have until 8 a.m., he said, rising to his feet. My lawyer will contact you with the details if you decide to be reasonable. With that, he walked back to the waiting black car, leaving Claire trembling with a mixture of rage and fear on the park bench. As soon as the vehicle was out of sight, Claire pulled out her phone and called Michael. I need you to call Robert right now, she said without preamble when he answered. Thompson knows about the raid this morning and he just tried to bribe me into lying for him. The reaction was immediate. Michael, his voice tight with urgency, promised to contact Robert at once, while Claire hurried back to the hotel. On the way, she couldn't stop looking over her shoulder, the feeling of being watched clinging to her like a persistent shadow. When she reached the room, she found Michael and Jennifer in a state of frantic activity. Michael was on the phone, gesturing emphatically, while Jennifer, her face pale with worry, was just finishing getting dressed. Robert is alerting the FBI right now, Michael reported as he hung up. They're moving the raid up. If Thompson knows they're coming, he could be destroying evidence as we speak. Or running, Claire asked, the fear plain in her voice. Unlikely, Michael said, trying to sound reassuring. Robert says they've had the house under surveillance all night. Thompson arrived about 20 minutes ago, but no one has left since. How did he know where to find me? Claire asked, still shaken by the encounter. And how did he know about the raid? He must have contacts inside the DA's office or the FBI, Jennifer answered, moving closer to examine Claire with maternal concern. Are you okay? Did he threaten you? Claire shook her head. Not directly, it was more subtle, but he made it clear he'd make the legal process as painful as possible if I didn't cooperate. What did he want, exactly? Michael asked, his expression hardening. Claire recounted the conversation, Thompson's offer, and the thinly veiled implications of what would happen if she refused. He almost certainly recorded the whole thing, Michael commented after listening. He was probably hoping you'd say something he could use against you later. I didn't say anything incriminating, Claire assured him. I was careful. Good, Michael nodded. But the fact that he'd risk a meeting like that shows how desperate he is. He knows the net is closing in. Michael's phone rang again. It was Robert, this time with urgent news. The FBI is entering the Thompson residence now, Michael reported after a brief conversation. They want us at the DA's office as soon as possible. They may need your testimony, Claire. The three of them scrambled to gather their belongings and head down to the lobby, where a car sent by Robert was already waiting. During the drive to downtown Seattle, Claire sat in silence, her mind torn between hope and fear. Would Lily be frightened by the raid? Would she understand what was happening? And what would happen next? The district attorney's office was buzzing with activity when they arrived. They were quickly escorted to a conference room where Harrington, Robert, and Detective Ramirez were already waiting, along with a man in a dark suit who was introduced as Special Agent Daniel Keating of the FBI. Gerald Thompson was taken into custody 20 minutes ago, Keating informed them without preamble. We found documentation directly linking him to money laundering operations for the network. We also found records of a $100,000 transaction to an account in the Cayman Islands that matches the approximate date Lily was adopted. Claire felt a strange mix of vindication and pain. On one hand, it was confirmation of everything she had suspected. On the other, it was the brutal reality that her daughter had been effectively bought like a piece of merchandise. And Caroline Thompson? She asked, thinking of the woman she'd seen with Lily the day before. She is also being questioned, Keating replied, though she initially claims to have no knowledge of her husband's illegal activities. She says she believed the adoption was entirely legitimate. Do you believe her? Jennifer asked skeptically. Keating exchanged a look with Harrington before answering. It's hard to say at this stage. There's evidence that the couple's personal accounts and legal affairs were kept strictly separate. It's possible he deliberately kept his wife in the dark to provide himself with an extra layer of protection. And Lily? Claire asked, finally getting to the question that mattered most. Where is she? How is she? Keating's expression softened slightly. She's safe, he assured her. She was picked up by specialized social workers before the raid began. Right now, she's in a temporary foster facility while the next steps are determined. I want to see her, Claire said immediately. I need to see her. I understand your urgency, Ms. Miller, Harrington replied, using her original legal name for the first time. But there are protocols we must follow. Lily is experiencing a significant trauma right now. The only parents she has ever known have just been arrested. She needs time to process before we introduce any more changes. Claire wanted to protest, to insist that it was her right to see her child, but a part of her recognized the wisdom in Harrington's words. Lily came first. Her needs, her emotional well-being had to be the priority. When then? She asked, trying to control the frustration in her voice. We've scheduled an emergency hearing with a family court judge for this afternoon, Harrington explained. We're going to request that you be granted temporary custody, given the extraordinary circumstances. The preliminary DNA results have already confirmed you are the biological mother, which strengthens our case considerably. And if Caroline Thompson turns out not to be involved? Michael asked. Wouldn't she have priority as the legal adoptive mother? The adoption itself is now under scrutiny, Ramirez responded. If it's determined it was conducted through illegal means, it could be nullified regardless of Mrs. Thompson's knowledge of the situation. Besides, Keating added, according to our informants, Caroline Thompson is fully aware of the nature of our accusations and has already retained her own lawyer, separate from her husband's. I wouldn't be surprised if she's negotiating her own immunity in exchange for information. The meeting continued with details about the imminent hearing. What Claire should expect and how she should prepare. Harrington stressed the importance of presenting herself as stable and capable, subtly suggesting that her appearance and demeanor would be closely scrutinized by the judge. The child welfare system is imperfect, he admitted frankly. It often favors families with resources over biological ties. We need to make sure they have no reason to question your ability to care for Lily. Claire nodded, understanding the unspoken message, that her past on the streets, her lack of resources, and her history of trauma could all be used against her. She felt Jennifer's hand squeeze hers under the table, a silent gesture of support and solidarity. After the meeting, they had only a few hours to prepare for the hearing. Jennifer insisted on buying Claire a more formal outfit for court, a simple but elegant navy blue dress, flat shoes that wouldn't aggravate her limp, and a light touch of makeup that softened the lines etched on her face by years of hard living. Looking in the hotel mirror, Claire barely recognized the woman staring back. With her hair pulled back in a simple bun, the dress gave her an air of normalcy and respectability. She almost looked like someone who could fit into the orderly world of judges and lawyers, of stable homes and predictable routines. You look beautiful, Jennifer commented, appearing behind her in the reflection, and strong. Claire managed a weak smile, appreciating the attempt to bolster her confidence. I feel like an imposter, she admitted, like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. You're not an imposter, Jennifer replied firmly. You're just a different version of you, The version you might have been if life had been fair. Claire nodded, though the doubt lingered in her eyes. Could she really be that person? A mother, a daughter, part of a normal family? Or was she just fooling herself, and worse, potentially fooling Lily with promises of stability she wasn't sure she could keep? The family courthouse was a modern building of glass and steel, intimidating in its bureaucratic efficiency. Claire, Michael, and Jennifer were led to a smaller, less formidable hearing room than the ones Claire had seen on television shows. Harrington was already waiting, along with a woman introduced as Lauren Wilson, a social worker assigned to Lily's case. Judge Graham is known for being fair but tough, Harrington informed them in a low voice as they waited. She will focus exclusively on what she deems to be in the best interest of the child. Stay calm and answer her questions honestly. Claire nodded, her mouth suddenly dry with nerves. She noticed that on the other side of the room an elegant middle-aged woman entered, accompanied by a man in a suit who was clearly her lawyer. Caroline Thompson seemed to have aged years in the few hours since her husband's arrest. Her face, though carefully made up, showed clear signs of crying. And there was a fragility to her posture that contrasted with the confident image Claire had observed the day before. Their eyes met briefly across the room. There was no hostility in Caroline's gaze, Claire noted with surprise, but a kind of resignation mixed with profound sorrow. It was the look of someone whose world had just fallen apart. Before Claire could ponder this further, a side door opened and everyone rose as Judge Patricia Graham entered. She was an African-American woman in her 60s with an expression that communicated both compassion and an absolute lack of patience for nonsense. The hearing began with Harrington presenting the basic facts of the case. Claire, positively identified as Sara Miller, the child who went missing in 1998, and confirmed by DNA as the biological mother of Lily Thompson. He explained the extraordinary circumstances of the separation, the human trafficking, and the recent evidence linking Gerald Thompson to the criminal network responsible. Caroline Thompson's lawyer, a man named Mitchell Dawson, argued that his client had been completely ignorant of her husband's illegal activities and had been a loving, devoted mother to Lily for 6 years. He requested that custody remain with her, at least temporarily, to minimize further trauma for the child. Lauren Wilson finally presented a preliminary report on Lily's current state, describing an intelligent and well-adjusted child, but one who was understandably confused and distressed by recent events. In our initial assessment, Lily has expressed concern for her parents, especially her mother, Wilson noted. She doesn't understand why the police took her father away or why she can't go home. Claire felt a sharp pang of pain at these words. Of course, Lily would be worried about the Thompsons. They were the only parents she could remember. The bond Claire yearned to rebuild was in direct competition with ties already formed and solidified over years. After hearing all the initial arguments, Judge Graham addressed Claire directly. "Miss Miller," she said, her voice firm but not without compassion. "I understand you have been through an unimaginable trauma, but my duty here is to first and foremost consider the well-being of the child. Can you tell me, in your own words, why you believe granting you custody would be in Lily's best interest at this time?" Claire rose slowly, leaning on her cane. She had mentally rehearsed this question, prepared elaborate answers, but in that moment they all seemed inadequate. Instead, she chose the simple truth. "Because I love her," she said, her voice clear despite the lump in her throat. "I have loved her from the moment I knew she existed. I loved her for the 2 years I was able to have her with me, and I have loved her for the 6 years I spent searching for her. I don't have a fancy house to offer or a prestigious education, but I have love, and I have a family," she added, glancing briefly at Michael and Jennifer. "A family that loves her too, even though they haven't met her yet." She paused, gathering her courage for what she would say next. But I also recognize that Lily has a bond with Mrs. Thompson, she continued, surprising everyone in the room. A bond that is real and significant regardless of how it was formed, and the last thing I want is to cause my daughter any more pain. So if your honor feels it is best for Lily to maintain some kind of relationship with the only mother she remembers while giving us a chance to gradually get to know each other, I would be willing to consider that. An absolute silence followed her words. Caroline Thompson stared at her in open astonishment, while Harrington seemed simultaneously surprised and concerned by this deviation from their agreed-upon strategy. Judge Graham studied Claire for a long moment before speaking. "Your honesty is appreciated, Miss Miller," she said finally, "and your willingness to consider the child's emotional needs above your own legitimate desires speaks well of you." She then turned to Caroline Thompson. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand you have been released on bail but remain under investigation in connection with your husband's activities. Is that correct?" Caroline was visibly nervous. "Yes, Your Honor, although I want to emphasize that I had no knowledge of Gerald's illegal activities. I am cooperating fully with the authorities." "Nevertheless," the judge continued, "regardless of your personal knowledge, the fact remains that Lily's adoption appears to have been facilitated through illegal means, possibly constituting child trafficking. Do you understand the gravity of this situation?" "Yes, Your Honor," Caroline replied, her voice barely a whisper. "And I am devastated. I love Lily with all my heart. I would never have knowingly participated in something that would cause another mother so much pain." The judge nodded gravely before consulting some documents in front of her. "This is an extraordinarily complex situation," she said at last. "We have a biological mother whose child was stolen through criminal means, and an adoptive mother who, pending a final determination, may have been unaware of the illegality. And in the middle we have a vulnerable child who is already experiencing significant trauma." She paused, looking at both women. "Considering all factors, my preliminary decision is as follows. I am granting temporary shared custody," she announced, causing surprised murmurs to ripple through the courtroom. "Miss Miller, as the biological mother with a primary legal claim, will have primary physical custody on the condition that she establishes a stable and suitable residence." Claire felt her legs weaken and gripped the edge of the table to stay upright. Had she heard correctly? Lily would be with her? "However," the judge continued, "recognizing the existing bond and the need for a gradual transition, Mrs. Thompson will have regular visitation rights which will be supervised initially. Furthermore, I am ordering that both Miss Miller and Mrs. Thompson participate in family therapy with Lily to facilitate this transition in the least traumatic way possible." Caroline Thompson sobbed quietly, a mixture of relief at not losing Lily completely and grief for the partial loss the decision represented. "I must emphasize," the judge added sternly, "that this is a temporary ruling pending a full hearing. If at any point it is determined that Mrs. Thompson had knowledge of or involvement in the illegal activities related to the adoption, this decision will be immediately reviewed. Likewise, if Miss Miller is unable to provide a stable and suitable environment, the arrangement will also be reconsidered." Claire nodded, absorbing the implications. It wasn't the complete victory she had imagined, but it was more than she had dared to hope for. Lily would be with her. They could begin to know each other, to build a relationship. The rest could be worked out in time. "When?" she asked, the question that always seemed to be on her lips. "When can I see her?" The judge consulted with Lauren Wilson before answering. "The social worker will schedule an initial supervised meeting for tomorrow," she replied. "If that meeting goes well, Lily can be moved to your residence the following day, with Mrs. Thompson's supervised visits beginning next week." Claire nodded, a knot of emotion tightening in her throat. Tomorrow. After 8 years apart, she would finally see her daughter tomorrow. She would talk to her, touch her, begin the long, difficult process of rebuilding the bond that had been stolen from them. When the hearing concluded, Claire found herself momentarily alone in the hallway as Michael and Jennifer spoke with Harrington about the practical details. It was then that Caroline Thompson approached her, her eyes red but her posture determined. For a moment, the two women just looked at each other, united by their love for the same child, yet separated by an abyss of circumstance. "I never knew," Caroline said finally, her voice broken but firm. "I swear to God, I never knew she was stolen. Gerald handled everything. He told me it was a private adoption, that the birth mother was a teenager who couldn't care for her. I never questioned it." She broke off, unable to continue as tears began to fall again. Claire watched her, searching within herself for the hatred or resentment she expected to feel for this woman, who had raised her daughter for 6 years. But all she found was a profound weariness and a strange empathy. In their own ways, they had both been victims of the same forces. "I believe you," Claire said at last, surprising herself. "And I know you've loved her, that you've taken care of her." Caroline nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "She's wonderful," she said with a sad smile. "Smart, compassionate, brave. She has nightmares sometimes, about people taking her away from me. Now I understand why." Claire felt a sharp pain at this revelation. Could Lily have subconscious memories of their separation, of the trauma of being torn from her arms? "I need to ask you something," Caroline continued, her voice taking on a sudden urgency. "When you see her tomorrow, please don't tell her the whole truth right away. Not about Gerald, not about how she came to us. It's too much for her to process right now." Claire wanted to protest, to insist that Lily deserved the truth, but she held back. Caroline was right. The full truth would be devastating for an 8-year-old. "What have you told her?" she asked instead. "About the arrest? About me?" "Only that her father is helping the police with some questions about his work," Caroline replied, "and that we recently found out she has another mother, one who lost her a long time ago and has been looking for her. I told her that sometimes families are complicated, that sometimes children can have more than two parents who love them." Claire nodded, impressed despite herself by how Caroline had handled the impossible situation. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for taking care of her, for loving her when I couldn't be there." Caroline looked at her in surprise, clearly not expecting gratitude from the woman whose child had been illegally given to her family. "I will take good care of her," Claire promised, understanding the unspoken concern. "And I won't try to take her from you if you truly weren't involved. Lily needs you," Caroline replied after a moment. "She needs stability and continuity, and she needs you. She needs to know where she comes from, who she really is. She needs the truth, eventually." In time they parted, each returning to their respective groups, to their lives that were now irrevocably intertwined through a child they both loved. That night, in the hotel room, Claire sat by the window as Michael and Jennifer slept. The city glittered below, the night lights of Seattle creating artificial constellations that competed with the stars barely visible in the urban sky. Tomorrow, she would meet her daughter. Not as a distant observer, but face to face. Would Lily recognize her? Would she feel some instinctual connection to the mother who had held her for the first 2 years of her life? Or would she see a stranger, an intruder threatening the security of the only life she remembered? Claire had no answers, only hope and fear in equal measure. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be moments of confusion, of pain, of adjustment for everyone. The full truth would have to be revealed gradually with care and consideration. The courts, the lawyers, the social workers would remain a part of their lives for some time. But for the first time in 16 years, Claire felt her life had a clear purpose, a future she could envision. She was no longer simply a survivor, a victim of brutal circumstances that had scarred her forever. She was a daughter who had found her way back to her parents, a mother who would finally have the chance to love and raise her child. She was Sara Miller and Claire Johnson simultaneously, the two halves of a fractured identity slowly beginning to heal, to integrate into a whole person who could, with time and support, become the mother Lily deserved. As dawn finally began to tint the horizon with shades of pink and gold, Claire allowed herself for the first time in a long time to truly believe that the future could hold something more than pain and loss. That it could hold love, family, belonging. That the girl who had disappeared from Portland 16 years ago had finally found her way home, bringing with her a new generation, a new beginning. And somewhere in the city, an 8-year-old girl was likely waking up, unaware that this day would mark the beginning of a new chapter in her young life. A chapter of discovery, of truths gradually revealed, of old bonds rediscovered and new ties formed. The story of Sara Miller, of Claire Johnson, of Lily Thompson would not end today. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time, it was a story they could write together, one page at a time, one day at a time, with all the complexity, pain, and beauty that real life entails. When the sun finally rose completely over Seattle, Claire turned from the window and began to prepare for the most important day of her life, the day she would finally hold her daughter again.